as a whole, society's good. As a big majority whole, society is good. When anti-police rhetoric has been out there, when things happen, when policemen do bad things, and that gets publicized, those are the times, believe it or not, and I know you know, those are the times that we get our meals purchased more. That's when we get cards and letters in the mail. That's when the school children write letters. We love you. We thank you for everything you do. Those bad experiences bring out the good people to let you know, we know that's not y'all. We know that that's not the Rangers. We know that that's not the highway patrol. We know that's not our deputy sheriffs. We know that that's something small. And just because it's getting blown up to look like some major deal that you're all bad, we know it's not.
Okay, so for the audience, I am super excited. Have never spoken to a Texas Ranger before, but this week we're going to actually talk to a few. And I'm just going to introduce my first guest. Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Brandon Bess.
And Brandon, can you tell me a little bit about growing up, and was there anything growing up that led you to law enforcement?
So I was born in Jasper County, rural East Texas. The town is named Kirbyville. The Kirbyville Police Department, when I was growing up, probably had two members. I think there was a chief and a night shift guy. But we had a very vibrant volunteer fire department. In that fire department, my grandfather was a member of the fire department. My father was a member of the fire department. And I was a member of the fire department. I hate to confess that as a policeman that I was one time a fireman, because you know how we pick on firemen. But my interactions with law enforcement growing up were through the fire department. Of course, we had DPS, the Highway Patrol, that were stationed there in Jasper County. I think at the time there may have been 6 Highway Patrol troopers were there. And of course, we knew all of them, went to school with their kids, were great friends. Some of my best friends were children of the Highway Patrol. So I had some exposure to the Highway Patrol, some exposure to the police department, not only through the fire department, but through my high school friends. Old troopers that I grew up with were Otis Lane and R.D. Cox, and just some historical figures, some of which are still around, some of which have passed away, but legendary figures, I guess you would say, for a small rural town like that. Everybody knew who their troopers were. They knew who their game wardens were. They were scared of all those people, me included, growing up. But I think the funniest story I always tell about why I decided I wanted to be a highway patrolman to start with was I was in high school. I think it was my senior year. I was already in the fire department doing volunteer work for the fire department there. So I knew the troopers. There was a new trooper in town whose name was Eric Malone. Young guy, you know, he may have been 23 years old. I'm 18 at the time, so we're pretty close in age. He's this sharp dressed guy. Uniforms are always perfect. Boots are perfectly shined all the time. He had a partner who was actually a classmate to my mother and father, so quite a bit of age difference there, but he would have been, 45, 46 at the time. My parents were young. We were at a convenience store, and I say we, my buddies and I were at a convenience store early one morning before school, and the Highway Patrol back then had Mustangs. They had Camaros later, but they had Mustangs at the time. Probably this would have been fall of 1990 when I was in high school. The patrol car would have been probably a 1988 or 1989 model, and that's important because they were hot rods. I mean, that was a big deal. And anybody that tells you they got into the Highway Patrol as a youngster because they wanted to, do good for the world, all those great things, yes, that is true. But what we really wanted to do was legally drive fast. And we're at this convenience store. Still remember, it was called Peanuts. At Peanuts in the morning, we're all gathered up, probably 7:15, 7:30. And in the distance, you can hear this GT Mustang coming because they were loud. Knowing those two guys, they probably had hauled their mufflers out, so they were extremely loud. 5-speed transmission manuals, and that Mustang comes roaring through, and they're running 130 miles an hour going to something. I have no idea what. But I saw that car go through. There's these two sharp guys. Windows are rolled up, so they have air conditioners in their cars. Cowboy hats on. Clean car. Hot rod. It was at that moment I said, that's what I want to do for a living. And it wasn't because of what they were going to. They were driving 130 miles an hour, looking sharp. They were the men. They were whatever. So Eric Malone and Kenneth Jones were two of those guys that I looked at as highway patrolmen and said, that's what I want to do. It's got everything that I could want to do. I get to help people. I get to be, that first responder. I get to go to things, but in the state of Texas has nice stuff. I want to go to work for those guys. So that's my real story about why I wanted to be a highway patrolman.
So about high school is when you figured
Yes, sir.
out.
Yep.
What kind of kid were you? What kind of student were you? Into sports or what were you?
I was a terrible student. I was in one of the quarters. It wasn't the top, middle, and maybe even the bottom. If they had a quarter outside the bottom, I was a kid that enjoyed the outdoors, loved hunting and fishing, agriculture, mechanical trades. My dad was an electrician, but also a mechanic. My grandfather was a mechanic in World War II. He later went on to be have his own mechanic business where he built alternators and starters. So a very mechanical family. So I was geared towards mechanics. I guess that would be why I liked hot rods so much, because I grew up around hot rods. So no, I was a terrible student, but I was a student who I think the majority of my teachers really liked. Even though I wasn't the studious type, I was that kid in high school that they knew they could count on. They knew I wouldn't lie to them about anything. They knew that these are the 80s. They knew that if their car broke down, they could call me and a couple of their buddies, and we would fix their cars for them. Teachers didn't make any money either. And still have, to this very day, some great friends who were my educators back, 40 years ago. Elementary teachers who I'm still connected with, that I'm still friends with. I've got a high school teacher that I drink whiskey with now, who's an old Navy corpsman veteran from Vietnam that I still get together with. So I've got a lot of old friends from my school days, not just the kids, but the teachers. But yeah, to answer that question, I was not very studious. I ran track. I played tennis because I was a small guy. I never played junior high football and was one of the littlest guys out there, so that didn't work out very well. I didn't like getting creamed constantly, so ran track, was a pretty decent track runner. Tennis, I played tennis because that's what all the girls played, and I figured out that if you played tennis, you not only got out of school all day every Friday, you were with all the cute girls. So I was on the tennis team, and including like my senior year, I was on the varsity team, wasn't very good at tennis, but was on the varsity team, but gave my position up as a varsity player to an underclassman who wasn't quite as good as I was, just because I still got to go on the trips and didn't have to play tennis. So that's my my sporting adventures. But I'm a shooter, I'm, like I said, an outdoorsman, love hunting and fishing, being in the mountains, being in the swamps. That's my athletic talent, if there's such thing.
Smart move with the tennis. I like that. Okay, so in 1994, you start with the Henderson Police Department. So first of all, how old are you when you start?
I was 21.
Okay. Why Henderson Police Department? How'd you end up there?
I went to Kilgore Junior College. That's Kilgore. Obviously, it's an old East Texas college that's been around for a long, long time, and it was known for its criminal justice program. Had a fantastic criminal justice program there for people attempting to get a 2-year degree. Most your state law enforcement agencies at the time, and DPS being one of those, just required either a 2-year degree, 2 years in the military, or 2 years law enforcement. But it's actually 1993. I think I started New Year's Eve was the first day of work of 1993. I had been at Kilgore College, and of course, your local agencies, chiefs of police, matter of fact, the chief and assistant chief of the Henderson Police Department were adjunct professors, if that's the right word, at Kilgore. They would come over and teach a traffic law class, or they would teach at the academy. Kilgore had an academy as well as their college program. So there was a connection through the college to all the local police agencies. One of those agencies would say, hey, you know, they would come teach, and hey guys, if any of you get certified, or if you've already been through the academy, or if you're a policeman, we're hiring right now. So the Henderson Police Department, while teaching at the academy, let us know they were going to have 3 openings. While I was in the regular police academy, I applied for a position and they hired me. And it was before I finished college, so they allowed me to work. I worked the evening shift there, 2P to 10P, and was able to go to college in the mornings, both at Kilgore and Tyler, to finish up my associate's degree. So that's how I got there.
How big was the department at the time?
Oh, at the time, maybe 30 officers, counting dispatchers, patrol officers, and investigators there. Probably 25.
Okay.
Pretty small.
I've asked this a few times, but what's your attitude? I mean, you're fairly young. Any fear starting out on patrol? I'm assuming you're by yourself and not in a 2-man patrol car.
There was an FTO program. My field training officer was a fellow named Paul Duncan. Paul and I were together. You know, I want to say their program was about probably a 3-month program. You know, you rode with a more senior patrol officer, several senior patrol officers, try to learn what you're doing. You'd been through the academy, you had college, but you had zero idea what a policeman really did. So I'm riding with a more senior guy. They're teaching you the paperwork, how to write tickets, how to work recs, how to do all these things with the investigators that are there. So no fear. It was a little, I guess, having been in the fire department and having been around policemen and wrecks and that sort of thing, I had a little bit of experience. And also when I was in college, I rode with highway patrolmen in the Longview area. They had and we still have, DPS still has a program where, you know, if you're interested in working for us, you can come out and ride with the troopers, see what they actually do. So I'd been around those folks enough, and I hadn't been around city law enforcement, like in a car, etc. with them. So it was a different world than what I'd experienced, but yeah, no fear. You're 21 years old. You're not really scared of much of anything, to the detriment of your chiefs and your sergeants, etc. You're not scared to wreck their cars. You're not scared to, you know, chase people and break doors down. And we're more scared when we get older. We're more scared of what our young guys are going to do. So at 51 years old, I see what it would have been like to supervise a 21-year-old me.
Right. Okay, so you're basically there for about a year.
Yes, sir.
And you start working for the troopers, state troopers.
So I actually go to work for a sheriff's office for 10 months.
Officer.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I leave, and the reason I left the city was the city paid about $1,600 a month, and the sheriff's office paid about $1,800 a month. So I moved over for a $200 a month pay raise back then, and you know, it was good experience. I'm glad that I got to experience both of those types of police work. It helped me in my later career, not only as a trooper, but as a criminal law enforcement agent and as a ranger, having done what I like to say is real police work before joining the state police. So 10 months with the sheriff's office. And you know, the difference in sheriff's office work and city police work is that you've got a whole county. And Rusk County is not a huge county, but you're still talking about hundreds of miles of roads, and there were 3 deputies per shift to cover a whole county, maybe four at times. So you had a sergeant and 3 patrolmen, and the sergeant would say, hey, you know, Bess, you're north, Norris, you're south, Jackson, you're covering the east side, and I'll just roam around. So you got 12-hour nights or 12-hour days, and we did both. We had that rotating shift where you do 4 nights and then 3 nights and then 4 days and 3 days. That was your monthly schedule. So that was a different world. That was deputy sheriffs in rural counties are very underappreciated in that how big of an area they've got. At 3-4 o'clock in the morning, there were many times, and this is no exaggeration, your backup could be an hour away from you. Literally could be an hour. Say they're on a call somewhere else, you're stuck on the north end of your county by yourself at something, and things go bad. It's just you. That's all you've got.
Okay, so the same question that I had for you with the police department. Mm-hmm. Now that you're with the sheriff, you're basically by yourself. Any worry for your own safety?
Never worried for my own safety. I was always confident in my skills. I was confident in my, not overconfident, but just saying I'd been trained right. I had fantastic partners. I had very senior deputies that I worked with. One of my old sergeants Howard Davis was just that epitome of what an old deputy sheriff was like. You know, he talked slow, he explained things slow, he cussed you out when you didn't do things right very loudly, but then forgave you, and you had coffee together in the middle of the night. There were many of those, but I was confident that I'd been trained appropriately to be able to deal with those situations, and had a sheriff that trusted me to be able to do that, to go out to the people that he's elected by and treat them properly to get the job done. So yeah, no fears. There were some touchy situations there. There were some times that I went to some houses that I didn't know how it was going to end. In my entire career, I've never had to use my firearm against anyone, but there have been 100 instances where I felt like I was 3 to 5 seconds from that. Just never got that way, thank God.
Yeah. Okay, so from the police department to the sheriff, you end up with the state patrol. So a couple questions about this. First of all, why do you go to the state patrol? And you and I had talked previously. At this point, I think your goal is to always be a state patrolman.
Yeah.
So explain to me the process of why you got there, how you got there, and why was that your end-all, be-all at that time?
So the excitement of it, I think, you can't ever rule out pay. When I joined the Department of Public Safety, I think our yearly salary after patrol school was $26,000 or $27,000 in 1995. And that was pretty good money, or at least I thought it was pretty good money. And you had insurance and you had benefits, all those things that you don't really need as then a 23-year-old. But your parents tell you, hey, you get that job. That coming from parents of construction workers and mechanics, having a pension, having a retirement that's there, having insurance was a big deal. So like, okay, well, if y'all say that's a big deal, but it was a good salary. The Department of Public Safety has been known, I'm not going to say since 1935, but probably since the 40s or 50s as being a very advanced police department for a state police department, and everything that they have and everything that you can do within the state police. But to be that highway patrolman, to be that, to be the road warrior for the state of Texas was a really cool thing. There weren't many of us back then. I want to say the entire state had maybe 1,800 troopers at the time. And Texas is a huge state, 254 counties. Our longest road from one end to the other is almost 900 miles from tip to tip. And troopers, I don't know what the number is now, but troopers back then, there was a stat. Each trooper was responsible for 327 road miles, him or herself kind of thing. So that was cool. You had something, you were a part of something bigger. You were a part of an agency that was a family. DPS was and has always been a family, going back to its roots in 1935, to the Rangers' roots in 1823. You want to be a part of that. And as you know, being a part of an agency that you're not just an agency, it's not just a job. You're friends with your people. You're friends with the wives and the husbands and you grow up with the children. The Highway Patrol is a very close-knit group. The criminal law enforcement is a closer group, and the Texas Rangers are like true brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers to one another. So that was what was appealing, but the work was appealing. Being able to drug interdiction, being able to get into a drug interdiction program, being able to enforce the DWI laws of Texas, take dangerous people off the streets, take murderers off the streets, take escaped convicts off the streets, being involved in manhunts, doing all those things, because your sheriff's offices and your city police departments wind up being pretty much restricted to the county or the city that they're in. Well, if you're in the Highway Patrol and you're stationed in Chambers County and you hear something, I hate to say good, but you hear something good or fun going on 2 counties over, you're going 2 counties over. You're going to help whoever's doing what in those counties. That was always appealing, not being restricted by, what's the word, a jurisdiction almost. Your sergeants, your lieutenants, where if there's a chase or there's a pursuit that you hear the Highway Patrol in and they're 5 counties away, but they're coming your way, by God, you better go get there and help them. Don't you let your brother trooper be out there by himself, because you may be his only guy at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So that was appealing. the training was appealing, the DPS Academy. Not having ever gone through anybody else's state police academy, but having been in the Army and having been through boot camp and through AIT and the military structure of the Army, the DPS Academy is the second most difficult thing that I had ever done, the 6-month academy, because unlike the Army or unlike the Marine Corps, you're in the military services, you're dirty, you're nasty, you're going, you're not sleeping, you're doing blah, blah, blah. Well, in the DPS Academy, you're clean, but you're going, you're not sleeping, you're getting called out at 3:00 in the morning to take a spelling test, or you're getting called out at 3:00 in the morning to read your general orders to your counselor, or you're getting woke up at 4:00 in the morning to go box your fellow classmates for about an hour and a half, and then you're getting sent back to bed and told that, hey, we're going to let y'all sleep till 7:15, and then 30 minutes later, you get woken up again because somebody left a piece of paper downstairs, and we're going to go take a spelling test now at 6:45 in the morning. And hey, your showers aren't clean. Because your showers aren't clean, we don't think we're going to go home this weekend. We think we're just going to stay here and clean showers until you can appreciate what we've given you. That doesn't sound like fun, but those were very fond memories that I have of going through that. And the funny part of that is going through it with folks that were not in the military, who didn't understand what was going on. Those of us that had been in the military, we took it seriously and laughed when it was over. Those folks that had never been through it, they took it seriously like, oh, the world's coming to an end because somebody left a piece of paper. We then taught those folks, you're not ever going to do anything right. Just roll with it and act like it bothers you, and everything's going to be fine. So the academy is an excellent place. Some of the best cadre in the world have been through there, the best speakers, the best instructors on every topic that there could be. Federal agents that come in and speak to the academy about drug investigations, folks that come in and talk about personal protection, people that talk about everything in that 6-month period. So the police academy that I went through was only a 6-week academy. So you got just this little clip of what being a policeman's like, just enough to get certified, and then you rely on the agency to teach you. Well, in DPS, that 6-month academy is so much greater than that. That 6-month academy, I would call it the equivalent of getting another associate's degree. They've packed that much stuff into 12, 14, 16-hour days of training over a 6-month period that you really know what you're doing. Granted, when you hit the streets, you still have to learn the DPS way. You have to learn, a lot of people have to learn how to treat people in situations. Those of us that have been policemen before, we had already kind of been through that. We understood that, but the folks that had never been, that's something new. But you could take a brand new highway patrol trooper right out of the academy, and within a month, they're ready to work. They're ready to go by themselves. And unfortunately, sometimes they are. And they're put right at it.
So as a trooper, I mean, you're a trooper for about 10 years, and you go into it thinking, this is it. This is where I want to be. But eventually you transfer to be a special agent for Department of Public Safety. Why? Why change?
So when I was in college, I interviewed an ATF agent, and I'm ashamed I can't think of his name, even though it's been 35 years ago, but I interviewed an ATF agent for one of my classes, and I don't remember which class it was, but he was an agent in Tyler, and he had done some undercover work into outlaw motorcycle gangs. And I don't remember the specifics about exactly what he did, but he knew a lot about the Banditos. He knew a lot about the Hells Angels. He knew a lot about these outlaw motorcycle gangs because he had worked cases on them, which was a big deal back in the 80s and 70s going back. So I gained an interest about gangs specifically, but about outlaw motorcycle gangs. So during my highway patrol career, if we came across any type of gang member, but if it's specific to these Banditos, Texas is a Bandito, or where the Banditos were, it's their home, it's their base. There's Banditos across the world, but we would encounter Banditos, and I'll say I never had a bad interaction with Bandito, but when we encountered those guys, we would collect information from them, and we would submit that information to our then intelligence service, it was called. Hey, I ran across John Doe. He was on this motorcycle. He's wearing this jacket. I saw these things on his jacket. This is what it said. He said he was going to Corpus Christi, or he said he was going to blah, 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 whatever. We didn't know what good that did, but we were trained that that's what you do. So I had a lot of interaction with folks in our intelligence service that later became the special crime service, that later became the intelligence service again, and then became the criminal investigations division. But I had interaction with those guys, and I really liked what they did. I enjoyed that type of work, the investigative type of work that they did. I liked the intelligence portion of it when I learned what they did. And along the way of that, started running into a lot of other gang members. When you start looking a little closer, when you're not just being the highway patrolman that, hey, stop for speeding, need to see the driver's license, need to see the insurance, you're going to get a ticket, you're going to get a warning, have a nice day, sir, go away. When you develop that into a true investigation, when you turn that into, what's your name again? What's your nickname? What I've heard of that before. What? And you start delving into that as you become a more senior trooper, a more senior investigator. I really became interested in that, and thus became interested in prison gangs and white supremacist prison gangs specifically. So that spawned my interest into it was then called our criminal law enforcement division. It spawned my interest in that, and the division was growing. So you could promote into that division. It's a sergeant position, just like a ranger is a sergeant position. You could promote and stay pretty close to home. I never wanted to move out of East Texas. I was fine with where I was. By this time I'm ready to promote, I've already got one child. I'm married. I think I've got another child on the way at the time. Maybe I've got two. I lose track. I've got three of them, but I had children, so my interest was in family. My interest was my local area that I was in, staying there. Being a father first, a Christian first, a father second, based on all that, and just creating a stable life for my family. So I wasn't interested in moving across the state for a $250 a month pay raise, but I was always interested in it. So got recruited, and by recruited, meaning some of the guys that I worked with said, hey, we're going to have openings in the Houston area. We're going to have openings in the Beaumont area. You really ought to start testing, or you ought to be prepared for, if something comes up here, we'd love to have you. And one of those guys, lifelong friend, Mark Leger, wound up going into the Ranger Division, been a chief of police, and has worked a lot of different things over the years now. Mark and I became really close back in those days when I was a trooper, and even when he was a trooper. I saw what he did. I really liked what he did. He was working with the FBI a lot. He was working with the DEA a lot, working with the ATF a lot in East Texas, working gang members, whether it be bank robberies that they were doing, assaults that they were doing, meetings they were having that resulted in huge drug trafficking investigations, auto theft investigations. That stuff became cool. That stuff became the new hot rod car to me. It's like, they grow beards, they wear shorts to work, they don't have to cut their hair. Maybe it's time I move over to that. It's that what do they call it, the 7-year itch or the 3-year itch. I kind of started getting that about 5 or 6 years in, and eventually was able to, promote into the special crime service, is what it was called when I moved over.
So let me ask you real quickly. I think it's fair to say that you have a specialty in, I guess, white supremacist gangs.
I did, and yes, I still do. I've still got a couple of informants out there that nobody else will deal with, so I still deal with those informants. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, because this seems to be a hot topic the last couple of years about white supremacist groups and at the national level. What's your take on that? Is that as big as a problem as at least the national legislatures make it seem to be?
I have a great friend who's a United States congressman, good old country boy from Woodville, good old country boy doctor from Woodville, Texas, who was called to ask me that very thing. I think what the media has portrayed, and this is just Brandon Bess, not the Texas Ranger speaking,
right,
but I think what the media has portrayed as white supremacy may be more extremism, but not really white supremacy extremism. It's extremism by a far right, or it's extremism by a far left, in that, they probably have this ideology based on us having an African-American president, or they probably have this based on having a blonde-haired, blue-eyed old man president, or a gray-haired old man president. They're all extremist in their ways. What I saw and what I worked in true white supremacy was gang members who joined these white supremacist group, and that Klansman, Aryan Brotherhood, the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, the Aryan Circle, the Solid Wood Soldiers. There's a bunch of different groups. The Aryan Brotherhood being the one that you probably hear about the most nationally. Those guys are prison gang members. Those guys are white supremacists. I hate to say this, not that it's not 100% true, but having worked with these people now, not with them, wrong word, having worked cases against these people, they're white supremacists when they're in prison. When they're out of prison, they will tell you that it's not about black, it's not about white, it's not about brown, it's about green. And how can they get that green? These white boys with swastikas on their necks are dealing with African-American Crip members and Blood members, and you're used to Hispanic gang members. They don't care when they're out. That white supremacy part that I saw was always on the inside, what they were doing when they were in prison. The bleed over from that, I've worked a couple of homicides since being a Ranger, and in intelligence and in special crimes involving these guys, and victims are all innocent. Nobody asked to be killed. Murders are all hate crimes. You obviously don't like somebody if you murder them. But that said, I'll say that I don't have a recollection of any of those homicides not being based on bad interactions between other felons, between gang on gang, between, if it's not a gang member, maybe this is a person that's supplying a product or purchasing a narcotics or stolen cars. Every one of those investigations that I've been involved in, I'm racking my brain right now. Actually, I can think of one. I can think of one that was before I was in the Rangers, about, and there's more, but about 2003. There was an innocent man that was carjacked in Baytown at a Walmart by Aryan Brotherhood members who carjacked him and wound up murdering him for his 1988 Chevrolet pickup truck. He's an innocent bystander with a pickup truck at Walmart buying fishing tackle on his day off. The rest of the murders, the rest of the assaults, the majority of the things that I saw with these white supremacists, with the Mexican gangs, with the African American gangs, with any type gang, always tended to be against each other, tended to be against rivalry with each other. There were very few, Methodist church members that got assaulted by the Aryan Brotherhood member while at the Walmart kind of thing. On the national level, in Texas, because it's really Texas, Louisiana, that I can speak for, I don't see that extremism even here. You've got, your Donald Trump faction who likes to vote for him, and maybe do they feel a little extreme about it? Well, yeah, but I think we've always had that. We've always had, when Kennedy was president, I think we've had that extreme, like, he's our guy and we'll do anything for our guy. When Ronald Reagan was there, he's our guy. When George Bush was there, when Jimmy Carter was there, I think there's always been that, but we've never had media the way we have media. We've never had 8,000 different ways to hear about things, from YouTube to your normal news, to your pay-per-view news, to all those things. I think it's just, it almost seems like a lot of these outlets are just looking for something to talk about, and how can they get their outlet in front of that. And sometimes that's, let's just use these ugly words, because they are. White supremacy is an ugly word. My grandfather fought in World War II and killed Nazis. That I hate them. That is, he fought and his friends died, and I know people who have died since in battle fighting these extremists, no matter what they are. So, yeah, to answer that question a long way, I think that is blown out of proportion. Extremism may not be blown out of proportion.
Okay. All right, let's get to the meat of it. This is why I'm here. So, was your goal always to be a Texas Ranger?
It was not. It was not, because I didn't think it was an attainable goal. When I started as a city policeman, the first that I remember, the first Texas Ranger I ever saw was at a bank robbery. I was a city policeman. This would have been 1994, and there was a Ranger in Tyler named Steve Black. Steve Black wasn't a big man. I would say he was maybe my size. Texas Rangers, when people across the world think of them, they think we're all 6'6". We can bench press 9,000 pounds. We smoke cigarettes and drink coffee as our meal. We don't eat. We just go. Steve Black pulls up. He's got no necktie on, and this was a bank robbery that led to a pursuit with a record driver. The record driver actually pursued the bank robbery suspect because record drivers had radios in their car. There was no policeman. An alarm call drops in Henderson, Texas. This record driver, who happened to also be the justice of peace, gets in pursuit with a bad guy, chases the bad guy out into the woods, turns into a big manhunt. Of course, the Texas Ranger shows up from Tyler, Texas, which is about, 45 minutes from Henderson. And he's in an old, we called them Shamus at the time. Chevrolet had a Caprice that had a wheel well cover, so probably a 1986 model. They were ugly cars, terribly ugly cars. But DPS had those, and Rangers had those. Well, here pulls up this blue car, and there's a fella in it with a black jacket, no necktie, and a cowboy hat. Kind of a smallish fella, had glasses on. And I'm like, sir, we've got a man. I'm a 8-month patrolman. Probably look like I'm 12 years old to this guy. I said, sir, we have a manhunt. You're not going to be able to get through here if you'll just turn around. And he rolls his jacket back, and I see that Texas Ranger star. That is the first time I really remember seeing a Ranger as a policeman, and it scared the crap out of me. I'm like, I've just offended the Texas Ranger. I'm like, so of course I say, I'm sorry, Ranger, going through, Sheriff so-and-so was up there. I'm scared I'm going to get in trouble at this point for not knowing who this guy is. So that's my first interaction that I remember with the Texas Ranger. And I said all that to say the Ranger Division, when I joined DPS, there may have been 130 Rangers total, and that's your chief, that's your assistant chief, that's all the bosses, that's everything. So there may have been 80 or 90 field Rangers. In a department as big as ours, the thought that a boy from East Texas could ever get a shot at being a Ranger, especially a boy that's not really wanting to move his family to El Paso, or he's not wanting to move to Boca Chica or Balmaray or any of these places that are 9,000 miles from civilization, just never thought it would happen. I admired them greatly, the Rangers that I knew and got to know through my years. Tony Leal, who was a Ranger in Liberty when I first came out of patrol school. Frank Huff, who was a Ranger in Liberty, who I ultimately replaced as a Ranger when he promoted. Ronnie McBride was a Ranger in Jasper. I could keep naming these guys that are heroes of mine through the years. Just never thought I'd get there. I never thought that opportunity would ever provide itself. Well, fortunately, the division has grown. We're still not a big division within the department. We're a very small division. There's only 171 Texas Rangers now, and that number is given to us by the state legislature. The legislature controls how many Texas Rangers there are, and we upped. Probably it's been within my 10 years. I think they gave us 20 extra Rangers, so we went from, I think we had 151, and I think that went to 171 since I've been a Ranger. So the chances of that happening early in my career, just didn't think it would ever happen. So as I'm going along, I'm working in criminal law enforcement. You're leaving the highway patrol where you're pretty limited in what you do. You're then in criminal law enforcement, and you're traveling statewide. You're traveling nationwide. You're testifying in federal trials because of these gang members and these conspiracies, and your horizons have grown. So you're around a lot of Rangers then and doing what you do, because you wind up, if they have a homicide that involves a gang member and they know you and they know what you do, they're going to reach out to you and go, hey, we've got this guy that was murdered. We don't have any clues. Who did he run around with? That intelligence stuff kicks in then. You're like, yeah, this is who he is. This is who he's married to. These are his kids, or these are his family members. This is where we know he lived the past 5 times. These are the cars that we know that he has. This is the kind of drug dealing he's into, or this is, this, that, and the other. So I got to know a lot of those guys in a different way then. And then it became I'm not going to say it became a goal. It kind of became a dream later in life. Like, there may actually be a chance that I could join the Rangers before I leave the department, because there's more openings, number one. Rangers tend to stay around about 10 years or so. at the time I really started studying on becoming a Ranger, I probably had 15 years left to go. So I thought, you know what, within the next 5, I could probably find a position where I don't have to leave home, or at least don't have to go far. There may be a position in Houston. There may be a position in Beaumont. There may be somewhere in East Texas that I could actually go that doesn't affect my family, yet I could pursue this dream. I could pursue this this goal of joining the Ranger Division. And that ultimately did happen. That ultimately became probably 3 years before I promoted. I started seeing like, hey, this really is a possibility that I could join the Ranger Division. I knew that Frank Huff, who was in Liberty, which would actually make me not even have to move from where I lived. We had a 20-mile residency rule. You had to live 20 miles from where your duty station was, which was a increase. When I joined the Highway Patrol, it was 10 miles. So if you got stationed in some little place and you were 10 miles, that was some difficult living situations for a lot of folks. So it had moved to 20 miles. I was 20 miles from Liberty. The company commander at the time, who's now Lieutenant Colonel Freeman Martin, had even talked to me about, hey, there's possibility we're going to put someone in East Harris County, LaPorte, Deer Park, Pasadena, some of these areas. Would you be interested in that if it comes up? Not recruiting me, but hey, you're one of the guys we know that's looking at us. Would you be interested if that ever happened? Well, absolutely. I was interested in that. Fate turned out, a good friend of mine, Darren Parker, and I went to an interview board. He promoted, got to be number 1 on the list. Houston came open. Darren got to stay right in his duty station where he was a narcotics agent. Then my predecessor, Frank Huff, promoted to lieutenant, which allowed me to move right into his position in Liberty County, not have to go anywhere. And also in a county that I had served as a highway patrolman, as a co-area, and then as a criminal agent, I had been over there. I had done undercover investigations in that county. So I knew the investigators, I knew the deputies, I knew the sheriffs, I knew the folks. So it was a pretty easy transition over to the Rangers. And I say it was a pretty easy transition. It was easy moving over. It wasn't so easy learning the job after 18 years.
Okay, so tell the audience a little bit about the process. I'm always curious about this. Do you have to have a certain amount of years on the job as an investigator? What do you get recruited? How does it work for you?
So not really recruited, but the Rangers, as a Ranger now, I'll tell you that we're always looking. We're always looking at who our troopers are. We're looking at who our criminal agents are out there, criminal investigation divisions agents out there. Who are those folks that we think are going to make good Rangers one day? And a good friend of mine once said, we know who the Rangers are before they know they're going to be Rangers. We know who deserves the badge. We know who we're going to pin that badge on because we see what they are. We see what they are as a trooper. We see what they are as an agent. We see what they are as a highway patrol sergeant. We've promoted lieutenants from the highway patrol, which is technically a demotion. So they're a lieutenant in the highway patrol. They promote into the Rangers and they lose a rank. They become a sergeant again in the Rangers. I can't remember his exact verbiage, but it's something along the lines of, you were a Ranger before we pinned you a Ranger. And we knew you were a Ranger before we pinned you a Ranger. You just had to get there. So the real process is, yes, you are looked at by the Ranger Division because it's so small, because we deal with so many we deal with career-ending things for politicians. We deal with career-ending investigations for officers. And I say that to say that they may be false allegations. So you potentially could be holding the fate of someone's career, life, etc. in your hands based on an investigation you do. It's a huge responsibility that you don't want to, number one, do it wrong. The worst thing you could ever do is do one wrong. Or 2, ever let it out that you're actually doing one of these things. To slip up and somebody know, yeah, I'm working on the county judge for so-and-so, such and such, which may be a completely false allegation. But once it's said, once it comes out of a Ranger's mouth, it becomes a deal. And it can become a big deal, and it can get people to lose their jobs. It can make a lot of things happen. So the qualifications for a Ranger are, you have to be a police officer for 8 years. You don't have to be a state police officer for 8. You have to be a state police officer for 4, or a DPS officer, not a state police officer. So you have to be in DPS for at least 4 years. And say you were a Houston police officer for 4. We hired you. You've been a highway patrol officer for us for 4. You're then eligible to take the test to become a ranger, do the background investigation, and fill out. We have a document called a 113, and I think our colonel is a former FBI SAC, and I think that 113 is something he brought over. It's the you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of a resume, I guess. It's a hey, let's brag on myself for what I've done to become a ranger, to become a CID agent, to become a highway patrol sergeant, and we absolutely hate it. It is because it's talking good about yourself, like, you know, I led this investigation, I did blah blah blah. One of the hardest things for a good policeman to do is brag on himself.
Yep.
So you don't necessarily have to brag on yourself, but it's hard to not calling it bragging on yourself that I led this, I did this, and I think when I did it, it was 16 examples, core examples that you had to put down. The old system was you took a test, there was an application, there was a background, you went to an interview board. What that's become now is there's a written test, there's this resume type process, which I appreciate, and then there's the interview board. So each one of those is on a point system. You know, let's say each one of them's worth 500 points. Each piece of that. There's some veterans points. There's different things that go into that. But you then get to that interview board. That interview board is conducted. The scores are tallied. And if there's one ranger position for the 35 counties, they're going to promote one ranger. They sometimes will put a person on a list and say, hey, we anticipate that old Brandon's going to retire in the next 6 months. We're going to go ahead and we've got a good candidate, did really well. We think he or she is a good fit. We're going to go ahead and put them on a list. That happens kind of here and there. It's usually just a promotion for positions that we know are there. You know, this is going to happen. Boom, we're going to do that. So that's the long and short of how you become a Texas Ranger. But it's the same process for a highway patrol sergeant, supervision in the highway patrol. The same for our criminal investigations agent. We all go through that same process, and it's a fair process. It's an equal process that. That's based on merit. It's based on, you know, you're not going to come to the Ranger Division just having been a good guy in the highway patrol or a good girl in the highway patrol who did his or her job, got along well with others. To get into the Ranger Division, there's so many things that the Rangers understand that you're going to have to do in that career. It's such a tall learning curve of the different things that we do, because I've written a county judge a ticket for committing Class C assault, and I have a man on death row right now that murdered an 18-month-old child and a 55-year-old woman. That's the two extremes of what Rangers do. So when you're looking at who is going to be your Ranger, who's going to be in this rural area where everybody depends on you sometimes for everything, literally for everything. Your sheriffs are going to bounce their problems off of you. Your chiefs are going to bounce their stuff off of you. Your district attorneys are going to say, hey, we've got this, and we don't, hate to use the word trust, but we don't feel like the citizens are going to believe that we've done a complete and thorough investigation unless you do the investigation. This officer is accused of doing so and so, or this person is accused of doing something, or this elected official is accused, and nobody is going to believe it unless the Rangers do the investigation. And that's a huge burden. I mean, if that's the right word for it. We don't consider it a burden. It's a huge responsibility to be tasked with some of the things that we get tasked with and bounced off of us, and our opinions are heavily relied on at times.
So you sent me a list of your responsibilities as a Ranger, and it is everything, essentially. Is there anything in particular that you guys work on, or is it just like, look, whatever major thing comes up, that's what the Rangers are working on?
It is duty station dependent, and that's kind of a funny way to put that. But my partners here in Houston, we've got, I think, 4 Rangers that are stationed in a county that has about 5 million people. So what they do on a day-to-day basis and what a Ranger in Liberty, Texas does on a day-to-day basis couldn't be more different from each other. The Rangers in Houston, you'll find they spend a lot of their time conducting custodial death investigations, meaning someone dies in the custody of a police officer or of a jail. The legislature mandated a few years ago that, say, the Houston Police Department has a death in custody, and that, whether it's a shooting or whether they put somebody in the backseat of the car and they just pass away of a heart attack, the legislature said the Rangers hold basically original jurisdiction in any type of death investigation involving the custodial death. What we've wound up being able to do, because we'd have to triple the Ranger Division to be able to do that for everyone in the state. People die every day, especially people that are going to jail die every day. We've been able to work that out to where the Houston Police Department has a fantastic homicide division. They have people that have worked more homicides in the last 10 years than I would work in 30 years as a Ranger. That's all they do is work homicide. They work death investigations. They could probably do their own autopsies. They have people that are shooting experts. They have people who are experts in types and causes of death. They have people who are experts in that. So what the Rangers have been able to do in that, in our larger areas, is, hey, we'll split that with the Houston Police Department. We'll split that with the Harris County Sheriff's Office, where our Rangers aren't working jail deaths every day of the week kind of thing. They work a lot here in the cities. They work a lot of integrity type investigations. You've got a lot of elected officials in a county that has 5 million people in it. There's a lot of cities. You hear about Houston, of course, but then you've got Pasadena, you've got Deer Park, you've got LaPorte, you've got South Houston, you've got Katy. I mean, I couldn't even name all the cities that are inside Harris County. Each one of those has a police department. Each one of those may have a constable's department. They have a sheriff's office that covers an area. And then they have elected leaders in each of those. They have a mayor and city councilor. They have a county judge and county commissioners. So our Rangers here tend to wind up spending a lot of time on public corruption investigations. Hey, we've got a city council member that's accused of, writing themselves checks that they aren't supposed to. True or not, they wind up doing those types of investigation. They also do a lot of homicides. There's a lot of murders that occur in Houston. The Houston Police Department, the Harris County SO, some of the finest investigators in the world, hands down. I call those folks if I have something that's just unusual. Hey, have you ever done it? And usually the answer is about 25 times. Let me tell you how we did that. So those do that. You get out into our rural counties, like where I'm stationed, and I'm a cold case guy. So all I work is cold case homicides, some cold case sexual assaults, but very, very few of those. Mainly cold case homicides because there's so many unsolved that are out there. So you get out into the rural area where your ranger is, Liberty County now has 2 rangers. They have 3 counties that they're responsible for. One county has a population of about 50,000. One has, we think, a population of about 100,000, and then the other county has a population of about 30,000. So those 2 rangers, everything that goes on in those counties where they're needed by the sheriff's offices, by the police departments, by whatever. I've worked a burglary at a dollar store as a rural ranger. I have obviously homicides, officer-involved shooting, jail deaths, public corruption investigations. You name it that happens in a small county where there's some kind of glitch to it and you get a call. And you have certain detectives that feel really comfortable with calling the ranger and like, hey, I'm working a weird burglary. And I think that burglary may be connected to not only Liberty, but San Jacinto County. And I think there's something to do with Harris County. You know what? We think they may be taking their product to Dallas because we checked the pawn receipt and one of our guns was in Dallas. We need to try and put this thing together and figure out what it is. Well, that local deputy sheriff, that local investigator's got some resources. I can pick up a telephone and in any state in the United States, within one county, probably, I can find somebody that's worked with a ranger at some point, whether that be a federal officer or whether that be a state or local officer. I can pick up the phone and call someone. So that's a huge resource that your small town ranger provides to his local agency. So that's what they're dealing. My phone, and it's on silent right now, there's no telling how many times it's rang for just something simple like that. Hey, Ranger, do you know somebody in Joplin, Missouri? Yep, do you need somebody in homicide or robbery? You give them that. The Ranger Network also is, if you don't have somebody, you send out an email. It's pretty comical. You send out an email that says, hey, does anyone know anyone at the Honolulu Police Department that may deal with hot checks? Well, you're liable to get 20 contacts that the Rangers have worked with somebody at the Honolulu, Hawaii Police Department dealing with hot checks. Our network and our resources are one of the biggest values that we have. The reason we have that value is to brag on my Ranger partners and to brag on the Rangers, going back forever. The reason that is, one of the very first things that you're taught as a Ranger is it doesn't matter who calls you. There's two people that are going to call you. You get a call from a Drug Enforcement Administration agent in Idaho, and he says, hey, I got a tip that there's a house, and this is the address, and it's in Dayton, Texas, and there's supposed to be a red truck there right now. I'm sorry to call and bother you, but do you have somebody that can go look for that red truck? And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting up, getting my clothes on, I go do it. The Rangers have that reputation. If another Ranger calls you, it's exactly the same thing. You drop what you're doing unless, the old story was, unless you had blood on your boots at a crime scene, it didn't matter what you were doing. You drop that and you go help whoever that person is with, no matter how big or small. You go do that job right then for two reasons. The first reason is if you don't do it right now, you're going to forget and you're not going to do it the next day. And the second reason is because anytime we reach out to anybody, they know that we drop anything we do to give them the help. And my local partners have often said, you can call somebody and get something done, and it might take us 3 weeks to get it done. And I think that's because of the reputation of the Rangers is we'll drop what we're doing for you. We'll go find that red truck for you. If it takes us 3 days to find that red truck, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the license plate. And if you want it pulled over and the driver put in jail, we can handle that for you too.
So you have a vast array of responsibilities, and you cover a lot of major crimes. What cases would ever necessitate you calling a federal agency, whether it's DEA, FBI, Homeland Security? When would you guys actually reach out to federal government?
In my 10 years as a Ranger and the 10 plus years as a CID agent, we often cross paths with our federal partners because so many of the crimes that we investigate have to do with some cross state lines nexus or a gang nexus or primarily a drug nexus, especially in these big investigations. So I have calls trying to think of one specific example. The feds often have resources that, especially in their civilian ranks, that we may not necessarily have. Hey, the feds have analysts that can do, if you need to know who had blonde hair and who was born in 1989 in Kirbyville, Texas, give us 30 minutes, we'll have you all the birth records. The feds oftentimes have those types of resources that we can reach out for through our agent partners. I called the feds more, and the feds called me more. ATF a lot, DEA probably second, FBI and the Marshals probably a close tie for third when they were doing investigations or I was doing investigations into a homicide or into a gang, in that we were often working the same thing. You may be working your case in Idaho and your suspect is old Johnny Smith. Well, Johnny Smith just happens to have a cousin who lives in Houston, Texas. So you've reached out to me to say, hey, I don't know that the cousin of Johnny Smith in Houston has anything to do with anything, but hey, put him on your radar. Well, sure enough, Johnny Smith, we put him in a data bank. He winds up getting arrested for something. I'm able to reach out back to you and we can put cases together. On the federal side, we have in homicide investigations, in gang investigations, two different really big ones involving the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas and the Aryan Circle, where there was murders, rapes, robberies, assaults, you name it, that both those gangs were doing. We partnered with the ATF and we partnered with DOJ in both those big investigations that both those things were over 5-year investigations, and both of them resulted in the prosecution of probably over 90, not successful prosecution of over 90 defendants in both those investigations. I think the Aryan Circle may even be 100 plus.
Okay, so with that being said, and this is typical Ranger stuff here, what you're talking about, I know you don't like to brag about yourself, but I'm assuming that that's the case in October 2015, where you, maybe not personally, but you as a group, you guys won the Attorney General's Award.
Right, we did, and that was a big deal. I didn't know the Attorney General had an award or how tall that guy was. He made some kind of comment. I'm trying to think who the AG was back then. Great big fella who wound up falling out with President Donald Trump eventually. He made some kind of comment when I walked up there about the Rangers, and I made some kind of comment about the Attorney General not being able to speak English. I wish I could remember what that was, but he was a Yankee, and I was obviously a Southern boy, so he's congratulating me on the award, etc. But yes, that was a major investigation into the Aryan Brotherhood, where we were able to take down every high-ranking member of the Aryan Brotherhood, and by take down, I mean put in federal
custody, up to and including 60, 70 life sentences, 60 or 70 year plus, up to life sentences on some of these gang members, not 60 or 70 life sentences. There were some low sentences that were handed out, but that was a investigation that had it all. It had murders, it had rapes, it had robberies, it had gun trafficking, it had major narcotics trafficking. It was a huge deal that was spearheaded by now a judge in Colorado, a state district judge, Dave Carpel, fantastic prosecutor, and an ATF, a senior ATF agent here in the Houston area who's since retired, Rich Baining, Major was his nickname. So Major Baining reached out to me. Dave Carpel reached out to me and like, hey, we started an investigation into one group, but it turns out we're finding links to this other group, that being the Aryan Brotherhood. We don't know anything about it. What can you tell us about this gang? Well, my answer was, how much time and how much money do you have? Because we can sit down and eat and drink for a long time talking about what DPS has done with this gang for the last 20 years or so. So that coffee meeting with those two guys and a partner of ours in Montgomery County led to a huge investigation. I would say there were 100 officers in some shape, form, or fashion involved in that. There were probably 35 or 40 of us that were almost full-time. There were a lot of full-timers from the ATF, from the DEA, and from the FBI, and from the marshals that were involved in working nothing but that case at the time. And they put some really, really bad guys in jail for a long time. So that's how we received that award, was it. Now, Major and Dave Carpel will tell you that if it wasn't for me teaching them everything about these gangs, they couldn't have done what they done. But I'll say that both those guys can almost tell you every member in the United States, can tell you who their parents are, can tell you what they drove 10 years ago. So I may have taught them the basics, but those two guys are absolute experts in the trade. I'd hate to be the gang member that goes before Judge Carpel and tries to get away with anything in Colorado now.
Okay, two final questions that I always ask. And based on what you just said, just basically the Rangers have this reputation of, you call us and we will drop everything. Mm-hmm. How did being in law enforcement affect your family?
I have a wife who, like a lot of policemen, we didn't meet because she was a nurse, but a lot of policemen and nurses and a lot of policemen and teachers wind up together. I guess it's that whole public service thing. I met my wife because I went to Methodist church camp growing up. I get stationed in a county where I know nobody, even though it's only, 5 counties or 100 miles from where I live. I get stationed in this county, and I remember, hey, there was a kid whose daddy was a farmer who lived in this town of Anahuac. I don't know anybody else here. Phone book, Dave. Pull out the phone book. Well, I'll be dang, this fellow still lives here. I call up my buddy Clay, and I said, hey, do you remember me? Not really. I'm like, well, you were older than I was, but I always thought you were cool in church camp every year, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, let's get together and have lunch. So I meet up with my buddy Clay. We have lunch, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, he says, hey, I got a single girl that I would like you to meet. She's just out of college. She's blah, 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 whatever. I'd like for you to meet her, and she's a nurse on top of that. Well, young highway patrolman, I'm thinking about, well, she's probably pretty, and she probably makes more money than I do. This sounds like a really good deal right here. So I wind up meeting my wife, who is she was a heart nurse, whatever you call that. She was in the heart nurse practice at the time. Cardiology, yep. Obviously, I listened really closely. She was in cardiology at the time. She was an LVN, pursuing a bachelor's degree, which led to pursuing a master's degree, which led to pursuing another master's degree, along the while 3 children, etc. My wife has never been a worrier about me, and I don't know why. My mother has never been a worrier about me. I don't know why, because I'm somebody that probably should be worried about. They've never worried. It's never affected my family life. I think I have 3 well-adjusted children. I think I've been able to. We never get to spend as much time with our children as we'd like to, and I am guilty of that even now. I've got a 19, a 20, and a 23-year-old that I wished I could have spent more time with them growing up, but I was always there for the baseball. I coached the teams. I went to the dance recitals. I went to the gymnastic things, oftentimes in uniform, always wearing a gun. Sometimes having been awake 30 straight hours when I go to these events, and maybe sleeping through about half that event. But I think, fortunately for me, my family has always supported it. None of which are in law enforcement. A lot of policemen are like, I hope my child follows in my footsteps. My goal has always been for my children to pursue what makes them happy and what they have fun at, because that's what law enforcement's been to me for 30 years. It's been fun people, fun cases. Sometimes suck, but they've all, I've got a pilot, I've got a welder, and I've got one that wants to be rich and famous. She hasn't figured out how that's going to happen, but that's what her goal is to be rich and famous. And she has the looks for it, she has the brains for it, and she has my personality for it too. So I assume she'll be that, or maybe she'll marry well. Who knows? Never any issues with the family like that. My kids were involved in the things, cops' kids sometimes have reputations of being little turds, for lack of a better term. Daddy's a cop, they think they can get away with anything. Well, my kids knew they couldn't get away with anything at all, because all the cops are my friends. All the judges are my friends. They could get caught running 3 miles an hour over the speed limit, may not get pulled over, but I'm getting a phone call. Hey, I saw Marshall out there on 563 running 58 and 55. You might want to talk to him. He'd get home and I was like, speeding today? Does everybody call you for everything? That's how my children were raised, and I think as a result of it, they were. I guess they always knew they were being watched. Just like there was that family was watching over them too. The welder the same way, and my daughter the same way. So very, very well adjusted. Never worried about me. The only thing, my father passed away about 4 years ago, and I always thought it was funny. Not when I was a policeman, but when I became a trooper. Your parents are like, that fear of your kid getting shot or killed, or getting in the car wreck or whatever. My mother told me that, she goes, I don't know what it is with your dad, but he is so worried that you're going to have to shoot somebody one day. I'm like, well, why do you think he's worried about that? She's like, I don't know. I mean, we know how you are. We know it probably ain't going to bother you a bit, but well, is he worried about me getting shot? No, he's never mentioned that. He's never worried about that. So that's as close to a family worry as I've ever heard. And my grandmother, or both my grandmothers, back in the old days in Texas, I don't know if it's way up north, but the police scanner was a big deal. And especially with old people. They had, before the 800 radios or the 900 frequency radios, our police radios were almost like CBs. Anybody could hear anything. Well, the old people had their scanners. They could listen to the fire departments talk. They could listen to the police departments talk. They could listen to everything. So me as a young officer getting stationed back close to home for a couple of years, both my grandmothers, I'd stop and drink coffee with them on my shift. I'd go by in the morning, I'd go by the evening. What'd you stop old John Smith for? Like, are you listening to that scanner again? Well, yeah, but he's been in a lot of trouble. We think he might use that marijuana. I'm like, well, y'all stop listening to that. Or you make it home, and some of these other people that you've gone to church with, gone to school with, these teachers would call you up. Hey, maybe on your day off. Hey, what's the deal with that wreck over on 563? I don't know. I'm home. Well, I heard it on the scanner. They've sent 2 deputy sheriffs and a highway patrolman out there. I grew up in that era of East Texas where everybody really did know everything that you were doing, even your own family or so. So I would say my family's probably taken almost as much entertainment out of my career as I have. And it's been a great one.
Last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you look back on when you started law enforcement till now? Has your attitude changed toward people and society?
There were points in my career where you get down. I don't think depressed is the right word. I think that's a way overused term. But I think there's points in your career where you become a little skeptical of everyone. because you talk to someone, prime example, the fellow that is on death row right now, murdered his own child, an 18-month-old, beautiful baby boy, and murdered that child's grandmother, 55-year-old grandmother. That fellow's a prison guard. He works within the state prison penal system, charged with watching over bad guys and girls and keeping things right. I interview that guy, I interrogate that guy. We go on and on and on, and there's points in time where I believe him. There's points where I think, how in the world can anyone harm a child at all, much less his own blood? How can that even happen? He did it. He's on death row, and he will pay the price for that one day, and he's going to meet his maker one day too. You lose faith sometimes in folks when you do this. You lose faith when you have to do an investigation into your elected officials. And I never did an investigation into one where they, well, maybe I did one that they physically harmed someone, but it's always about an elected official taking something that's not theirs. You lose a little faith in the system there when, the elected official's supposed to be doing that for a reason, just like the policeman, though we're doing it for fun, we do it for love, we do it for it's what we're called to do. But when you find someone that's taken something, when there's folks like you and I that, though we get paid by the government, we're protecting the people against the government at times. And in those situations where a public official's taken something, taken a bribe, taken $50, taken a tank of gasoline, and I think about my parents that, again, my dad worked construction for Brown and Root for years. They bought their own business, never had much of anything, weren't poor. We always had food. We always had clean clothes, had a great life. We might not have taken big vacations, but we had it pretty dang good. That the money that my mom and dad were having to give to the government through the city, through the county, through the state, through the feds, that anybody would take a penny that they're required to give up for their hard-earned living, that they're trying to have a better life for their kids. They're trying to let their kids have something they never had, trying to save up for something. That became disheartening. As a whole, society's good. As a big majority whole, society is good. When anti-police rhetoric has been out there, when things happen, when policemen do bad things and that gets publicized, those are the times, believe it or not, and I know those are the times that we get our meals purchased more. That's when we get cards and letters in the mail. That's when the school children write letters. We love you. We thank you for everything you do. Those bad experiences bring out the good people to let you know, we know that's not y'all. We know that that's not the Rangers. We know that that's not the highway patrol. We know that's not our deputy sheriffs. We know that that's something small, and just because it's getting blown up to look like some major deal that you're all bad, we know it's not. Little old ladies come up to you in restaurants and hug you. We're sorry you are having to put up with all this mess you're putting up with. Those are, and I got a lot of memories like that over my 31 years of doing this. It seems like when those times are worse, it seems like when the media may be trying to beat up on all of law enforcement or all of the military or all of whoever, that's when we see the true good public come out to support us and say, hey, we know what you do. We understand what you do. The jury trials that I've been through over the years, another great example of when you finish up and those jurors come up to you and tell you, we may not have believed this and this and this, but when you got up there and you told us the way it was and you didn't hold anything back, we believed you. And that's what made this case. And that's what did X, Y, and Z. Those are fantastic feelings. And those, yeah, I believe society's in just as good a shape as it ever was. I just think we hear more of the bad. I think we're exposed to more of the bad things that have probably been going on forever, and we just didn't hear about before. The United States of America is what is that saying? It's the greatest example of something that could be good that we're still working on 200 and something years later, or a whole bunch of years later. That's still the truth. I've been to a lot of countries. I've been to a lot of places over the years working, and we've got it good. Policemen have it good. Our pay now is just, when I went to work making $25,000 a year, my goal was, hey, do 30 years in DPS. If I can be a highway patrol sergeant, or if I can be a criminal investigations division agent and get out of there making $55,000 a year, man, I don't know what I'll ever do with all that money. My wife and I will be able to, take trips and do things. And now I look back at that and think, what was I thinking? How did I ever think we would be able to survive on that with 3 children going to college and all that? And that's a result of society supporting law enforcement. The legislature doesn't give it to us because they love us. They give it to us because their constituents say, we need to pay our cops more. We need to take better care of our policemen and our firemen and our paramedics. We need to take better care of those people. So we know we're supported. We know that we're loved. We know that 99%, there's that old biker gang theory of the 1%ers. Well, we know the folks that hate us are probably less than 1%. We know that we're well thought of because those folks know that truly we'd lay our lives down for them. We'd run out in front of that car right now when you and I finish this interview to save that child, sparing anything else. And I know all my brothers and sisters are exactly the same way. The people of Texas know that too. So it's been great.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.